Caitlin Clark isn't injured, she isn't resting. She's just gone. No warning, no explanation. The WNBA's biggest star simply vanished from the court like she got Thanos-snapped out of the lineup. And the craziest part? The league is acting like nothing happened. Fans are losing their minds, reporters are demanding answers, and the internet is tearing itself apart trying to figure out what's really going on. But before you think this is just some load management excuse, trust me, it's way deeper than that. This isn't just about one player missing a game. This is about power, favoritism, and a league caught red-handed trying to silence the very player who's been carrying them on her back. And just when things looked shady enough, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie blew the lid wide open with a firestorm nobody saw coming. They didn't hold back, and what they revealed is shaking the entire WNBA. So buckle up, because this isn't just another sports story, this is a battle for control. And if you don't stick around till the end, well, let's just say 100 spiders might crawl on your bed tonight. It all started quietly. One night, Caitlin Clark's name was on the lineup, and the next, gone. No warm-ups, no injury report, no sideline shots, just empty space where the WNBA's biggest star was supposed to be. Fans instantly noticed. Comment sections blew up with, "Where's Caitlin?" and "Did I miss something?" Meanwhile, reporters at courtside looked like they'd just been told Santa Claus wasn't real. There was no press release, no coach's explanation, not even the usual day-to-day excuse teams love to use. Nothing. Within minutes, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed it was load management, others swore it had to be disciplinary. But here's the problem. None of it made sense. Caitlin wasn't struggling, she wasn't hurt. In fact, she was leading her team in points, assists, and ticket sales. You don't just bench the player who's literally filling your arenas, unless something way bigger is going on behind the curtain. And fans could feel it. Something about this disappearance wasn't normal. It was suspicious. Too suspicious. But the strangest part? The silence. Everyone who should have been talking, coaches, execs, league officials, said absolutely nothing. And that silence, instead of calming people down, only set the internet on fire. Because if there's one thing sports fans know, it's this. When the people in charge say nothing, it usually means everything. Not long after Caitlin vanished, the whispers began. At first, it sounded like the usual gossip. Resting her legs, protecting her for the playoffs. But then came the leaks. Insiders started hinting that this wasn't about basketball at all. Apparently, Caitlin had been butting heads with WNBA executives behind closed doors. She wasn't just a rookie anymore, she was a phenomenon, and that meant she had a voice that didn't always agree with the league's agenda. One rumor claimed she openly challenged a marketing campaign during a private meeting, calling it tone-deaf and completely out of touch with real fans. Executives didn't take that lightly. Within 48 hours, her minutes started to mysteriously drop. Within 72 hours, she wasn't even on the court. And now, she's practically been erased. Here's the kicker. Caitlin didn't break any rules. She didn't skip practice. She wasn't underperforming. If anything, she was making the league more money than they'd seen in years. But when you're that outspoken, when your star shines that bright, not everyone in power is cheering for you. And the fans knew it. They started putting two and two together. The silence, the sudden benching, the strange coaching decisions. It all felt like a cover-up. But before the conspiracy theories could spin out of control, one player decided enough was enough. And the second she opened her mouth, the entire league felt the shockwave. While the league was busy pretending nothing was wrong, Sophie Cunningham wasn't about to play along. Reporters were scrambling, fans were rioting online, and the WNBA's PR team was probably stress-eating donuts in the back office. But Sophie? She walked into a post-game interview and dropped a bomb. She didn't waste time with cliches like, "We just have to trust the system." Nope. She looked straight into the cameras and said, "You don't sideline your biggest star unless you're scared of her power." Boom. One sentence. That's all it took. And the internet detonated. Clips of her call-out spread like wildfire across Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Basically everywhere except the WNBA's official page, which suddenly went suspiciously quiet. Fans clipped it, remixed it, and even turned it into memes. Someone edited her line over a WWE entrance theme, and it somehow worked. But jokes aside, Sophie's words hit harder than a buzzer-beater 3. She wasn't hinting, she wasn't playing nice, she was calling the league out for retaliation. for politics, for treating players like chess pieces instead of human beings. And fans rallied instantly. Hashtags like #Stand with Sophie and #Free Clark started trending within hours. The more the league tried to keep silent, the louder the fans and Sophie's supporters got. But Sophie wasn't standing alone for long, because less than 24 hours later, another player walked up to the mic, and what she said made Sophie's words look like the opening act. If Sophie Cunningham lit the match, Lexie Hull walked in with a flamethrower. The very next day, after practice, she strolled into the press room, faced the cameras, and without hesitation, dropped one of the coldest lines in WNBA history. If Caitlin Clark can be treated like this, what do you think they'll do to the rest of us? Silence. Not the awkward kind, but the pin drop. Every reporter's eyebrow just hit the ceiling kind. That single question cracked the story wide open. Because Lexi wasn't just defending Caitlin, she was exposing the whole system. And social media? It went nuclear. Clips of Lexi's statement spread faster than hot gossip at a family barbecue. ESPN anchors replayed it, YouTubers reacted to it, even NBA players were sharing it with captions like "Fire, fire, fire." One fan even tweeted, "Lexi just Thanos-snapped the league with one sentence." But she wasn't done. Oh no, Lexi followed up by posting a black and white photo of her and Caitlin with a single word in the caption, "Loyalty." That one word hit harder than a dunk in the fourth quarter. Fans debated endlessly. Was she calling out teammates, coaches, executives? Nobody knew for sure, but everybody knew it was aimed at someone, and the timing made it crystal clear. This wasn't random. Even worse for the league, sources started leaking that Lexi was one of the most vocal voices in team meetings. She wasn't just speaking to the media. She was challenging coaches directly, asking why their one player drawing sellout crowds was suddenly nailed to the bench. Whispers of a locker room split started turning into headlines. Some teammates reportedly backed her, others stayed quiet. But one thing was certain, Lexi had just declared she wasn't afraid of the league, and fans loved every second of it. And then she posted the tweet. Short, cryptic, deleted in minutes. If you want to build a legacy, stop silencing the ones who create it. Screenshotted instantly, of course. Fans spread it everywhere. Reddit threads, TikTok breakdowns, even conspiracy theories on YouTube channels with names like Sports Truthers 101. At that point, it was official. Sophie and Lexi weren't just teammates anymore, they were the front line of a full-on rebellion. But here's the thing. Once the players spoke up, the fans didn't just sit back and cheer. They grabbed their phones, their hashtags, and their receipts. And they came for the league. The second Sophie and Lexi spoke out, the fans went from frustrated to furious. And if there's one thing leagues should know by now, it's this. Never underestimate a fan base with Wi-Fi and too much free time. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, the entire internet exploded. Hashtags like #Free Clark, #Justice for Caitlin, and #Stop Silencing Stars started trending worldwide. Fans didn't just complain, they went full detective mode. They pulled game footage, slowed it down frame by frame, and built entire video essays pointing out how referees ignored fouls against Caitlin. Others tracked how her minutes mysteriously dropped, despite her dominating every stat sheet. And then came the bombshell. Fans noticed the WNBA's own social media pages had quietly reduced their Clark coverage in the days leading up to her disappearance. Coincidence? Not a chance. At least, not according to the thousands of fans posting side-by-side screenshots yelling, "We've got the receipts!" Forums turned into war zones. WNBA posts were swarmed with angry comments. Some fans even joked that finding Caitlin Clark had become harder than finding Waldo. One viral TikTok racked up millions of views with the caption, "Where's Caitlin? WNBA edition." And the movement wasn't staying small. Even NBA stars started chiming in. Big names were reposting fan content, throwing shade at the league, and openly demanding answers. When superstars from other leagues start dragging you online, yeah, you're in trouble. At this point, the fans weren't just talking anymore. They were organizing. Some started petitions, others called for boycotts. A few even tagged sponsors directly, asking if they were okay with the WNBA silencing its most marketable star. The pressure was building by the hour, and after 2 long days of silence, the league finally blinked, and their response only made everything worse. After nearly 2 days of fans storming the internet like it was Black Friday at Best Buy, the WNBA finally broke its silence. And let me tell you, their response was about as satisfying as ordering a large pizza and getting a single breadstick. A polished corporate statement appeared on their official pages. No names, no real answers. Just a vague excuse blaming strategic rotational decisions and asking fans to trust the process. Trust the process? Bro, this isn't the 76ers, it's the WNBA. And last time I checked, the process doesn't involve benching the one player selling out arenas every night. The backlash was immediate. Fans didn't buy it, reporters didn't buy it, and players definitely didn't buy it. In fact, the wording of the statement only confirmed what people were already thinking. This wasn't basketball strategy, this was a cover-up. And here's where it gets spicy. Sophie Cunningham responded with a single eye-roll emoji on Twitter. No caption, no explanation. Just that little circle of shade. Within minutes, it had tens of thousands of likes. Lexie Hull, she doubled down. She reposted a clip of the statement being read on air with the caption, "So, we're pretending this is normal now?" Ouch. The sarcasm was sharper than a Steph Curry three. Even veteran analysts piled on. One former WNBA star tweeted, "Rotational decisions don't erase your MVP candidate without a reason. Something else is going on, and it stinks." Meanwhile, fans turned the league's official statement into a meme. Someone edited it into a "we regret to inform you" format. Another put the entire press release into Comic Sans, and one genius even made a TikTok where the statement was read by Siri over circus music. But behind the laughs, the reality was brutal. The league's response wasn't putting out fires, it was pouring gasoline. And the numbers didn't lie. Caitlin Clark's jersey sales dropped overnight. Tickets for games she wasn't expected to play started getting returned. Even sponsors were quietly calling the league asking for clarification, which in corporate speak means, "Fix this before we pull our money." Yet the WNBA stayed quiet. No follow-up, no interview, just radio silence and frantic damage control behind the scenes. But here's what they didn't realize. When you silence one star, you don't erase the story. You just create a dozen more voices ready to fight back. And that's exactly what happened next. After the league's so-called statement, things didn't calm down. They blew up. The fallout was immediate, and the ripple effects hit harder than a Shaq dunk on a fragile backboard. First came the numbers. Caitlin Clark's jersey sales, the hottest item in women's basketball, nosedived overnight. Ticket sales for Fever games, suddenly fans were returning seats faster than they'd return an Amazon package that showed up in the wrong size. Even YouTube highlight reels of Clark's best plays started getting flooded with comments like, "RIP, the only reason I watched." Then came the sponsors. Behind closed doors, whispers started leaking that at least two major brand partners had reached out to the league asking for clarification before continuing promotions. Translation, "Fix this mess or kiss our money goodbye." But maybe the scariest fallout wasn't financial. It was inside the locker rooms. What started as whispers quickly became full-on fractures. Players who used to laugh together before games were suddenly whispering in corners, side-eyeing teammates, and questioning who was really loyal to who. After the league's so-called statement, things didn't calm down. They blew up. The fallout was immediate, and the ripple effects hit harder than a Shaq dunk on a fragile backboard. First came the numbers. Caitlin Clark's jersey sales, the hottest item in women's basketball, nosedived overnight. Ticket sales for Fever games, suddenly fans were returning seats faster than they'd return an Amazon package that showed up in the wrong size. Even YouTube highlight reels of Clark's best plays started getting flooded with comments like, "RIP, the only reason I watched." Then came the sponsors. Behind closed doors, whispers started leaking that at least two major brand partners had reached out to the league asking for clarification before continuing promotions. Translation, "Fix this mess or kiss our money goodbye." But maybe the scariest fallout wasn't financial. It was inside the locker rooms. What started as whispers quickly became full-on fractures. Players who used to laugh together before games were suddenly whispering in corners, side-eyeing teammates, and questioning who was really loyal to who. Sources close to multiple franchises said the tension was radioactive. It wasn't just about Caitlin anymore, it was about the league's future, and every player was quietly choosing a side. On one end, the veterans who'd seen it all before, who believed staying quiet kept careers safe. On the other end, the younger stars like Sophie and Lexi, who were ready to torch the old playbook and demand change. The WNBA wanted silence. What it got instead was a growing divide that threatened to split the league in two. And just when things looked like they couldn't get any more chaotic, Sophie and Lexi decided they weren't done. Not even close. Because when they came back into the spotlight, they didn't just drop hints or cryptic posts. They went straight for the jugular. If you thought Sophie and Lexi were done after their first firestorm, think again. They came back. And this time, they weren't dropping hints. They were launching a full-blown attack. In a live joint interview, the two walked in with no smiles, no PR-friendly fluff, just ice-cold stares straight into the camera. Reporters braced themselves, and then Sophie dropped the line that broke the internet. If this is how you treat the player who built your league, no one's safe. The room went dead silent. You could practically hear jaws hitting the floor. It wasn't just a statement, it was a warning. A shot fired directly at the WNBA's leadership. And before anyone could even catch their breath, Lexi followed it up with, "We've been told to stay quiet for too long. Not anymore." Boom. Back-to-back truth bombs. If Sophie had just landed a haymaker, Lexi came in with the knockout punch. Within minutes, clips of the interview were everywhere. ESPN anchors called it the most honest moment in league history. Fans flooded timelines with fire emojis, clapping gifs, and captions like, "They said what everyone was thinking." NBA stars reposted it with words like "finally" and "facts." Even rival WNBA players started liking and sharing the clip, some with subtle captions like "say it louder" or "needed this." It was clear. Sophie and Lexi weren't just standing up for Caitlyn anymore, they were drawing a line in the sand for every player in the league. The era of silence? Over. The message? Crystal clear. If the WNBA wouldn't protect its stars, then the stars would protect each other. And here's the kicker. Sponsors, media outlets, and even former players began weighing in. What started as a controversy around one benched rookie had now snowballed into a full-blown movement threatening to change the entire landscape of women's basketball. But as the fire spread, a bigger question loomed. Was this just the start of a rebellion, or the beginning of the WNBA's biggest crisis in history? By this point, it wasn't just about Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, or Lexie Hull anymore. The fire they lit was spreading everywhere, and it was dragging the entire WNBA into the spotlight, whether the league liked it or not. Independent media outlets started publishing deep dives into league politics. Former players came forward with stories of being benched, silenced, or threatened for speaking out years ago. Suddenly, the dots started connecting. This wasn't an isolated case. It was a pattern. Fans weren't just angry about Clark being sidelined. They were furious at the idea that their league, the one they'd fought so hard to build, might be run on favoritism and backroom deals instead of fairness and talent. Petitions demanding transparency shot up overnight. Sponsors were forced into the conversation. And on social media, one message echoed louder than anything: protect the players or lose the fans. Even sports commentators outside the WNBA world jumped in. NBA stars, journalists, and even celebrities started calling it out. This wasn't just a women's basketball story anymore. It was a sports story, period. And through it all, Sophie and Lexi stood firm, becoming unlikely heroes. What started as two players defending Caitlyn had turned into something far bigger: a players' movement, a rebellion, and maybe even the start of a new era. The WNBA tried to erase one player, but in doing so, they lit a fuse they can't control. Caitlin Clark's silence created a roar, Sophie Cunningham's courage sparked a fire, and Lexie Hull's words turned that fire into an inferno. Now, the league faces a choice: adapt or get burned. Listen to its stars or risk losing the very audience it fought so hard to gain. Because here's the truth: you can bench a player, but you can't bench a movement. And what happens next could decide not just Caitlin Clark's future, but the future of women's basketball itself. So strap in, because this story is only just getting started. And hey, before you click away, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't, well, let's just say 100 spiders might crawl on your bed tonight.